Hi, welcome back. This is Anish Giri, and this is the fourth round recap. We've had a rest day yesterday, so we are all fresh and eager for another day of recap. The players were eager to play as well. There were lots of exciting pairings, as is the case pretty much every day. But today, in particular, I was eager to see Ding Liren against Fabiano Caruana. I felt it was perhaps the last chance for Ding to save his start. If he wasn't going to win today, it would just go in the books as a bad start. He's had 3 whites out of 4 games. White always gives you an advantage of pushing first, going for it, and playing for a win. And Ding wasn't able to do anything and just lost in the first round with the white pieces. So I felt today he really had to win to somehow rescue the start. Of course, we also had Nepo against Firouzja, where I thought it would be Alireza who would try to muddy the waters, try to perhaps get a little naughty and strike. But, well, we'll see what happens, as this became really the game of the day. Not sure I like that term, game of the day, but for today, this certainly was one. And, of course, we still had 2 other exciting games between Rapport and Nakamura and Duda against Rajabov. We will take a close look at them as well. But first, let's start with a banger. Nepo against Firouzja. What a game that was. Jan started with 1 e4, as he usually does. After c5, we got the Sicilian. Alireza was ready for the Najdorf, as so many players already showed in this tournament. Najdorf is in good shape. I'm always happy to talk about the Najdorf. An opportunity for me to plug my Chessable course on the Najdorf and tell everyone to go pro and all of that. Chessable will be very happy with that. So please do so. There also I will, at the Chessable, I'll also look at this game in more depth, show you some puzzles and whatnot, and there you can enjoy all the Chessable perks. But here, let's look at the game. Najdorf was on the board and Jan played f3. This English attack is back in fashion, as we had seen in the previous round. That was a game between Fabi and Duda, where Fabi also went for the English attack, and now too Jan is probing his inexperienced opponent. Alireza also plays e5, but goes for a different setup. If you remember, Duda went for the h5 systems, where you stop g4. Here, Alireza just allows it. This is the old way of playing. Back in the days, they wouldn't stop g4. They wouldn't move pawns on the side where they intend to castle. They would see it as a major weakness. They would just play on the other side. G5 hit by b4. Old main line, lots of theory here, lots of options. Knight e2 is the main move. Now knight goes back, knight e8, and after f4, white is threatening f5, black goes a5. This is old theory, plenty of games. The main line used to be f5, a4. Now the old move is knight bd4. Funky little move, ed knight d4. Now you think that, okay, bishop can take the pawn, but no, there is knight c6, hitting the queen and the bishop. What black does here is b3, threatening ba2. After king b1, bc knight c2. The bishop does a desperado. Bishop b3, takes, knight a3, knight e5, and this is an old tabia, which is supposed to be fine for black, but Alireza came with something new. He played the move bishop c4. This move is not really well known, but there are some corresponding games, some games of lesser known players in the database. I guess Jan was probably taken aback by this. He spent a lot of time, but reacted in a very natural way. He played king b1. This a4 seems to be a threat, but also interesting is move knight g3. That's the one the computer actually prefers initially, and after takes a4, computer is saying it's okay to drop the knight back to a1, but of course for a human player it's very hard. And I know Jan, he's a funky player, of course, but he has a very healthy traditional chess upbringing, and he doesn't like such knights on a1. And so I understand him going for king b1 instead, and after a4 tucking the knight away to c1. But this gives black just enough time to break free in the center with d5, opening the bishop, but mainly giving that d6 square for the knight. White doesn't want to play long, take the pawn. No, he does a counter sack f6, opening the g file, and you would think that this is where the analysis of Alireza Firouzja begins, and I'm sure they did. I know his team has been working very hard for this event, and they surely have analyzed this position in great detail. But I guess, as it so often happens in modern chess, somewhere between the team of seconds and the game, and the player looking at the files, and the player looking at the files before the game, somewhere in that chain something has gone wrong, and somehow Alireza was unable to recollect his stuff here. And after GF took with the D knight, knight G3. Already here he spent a lot of time and made a big mistake. I don't know what went wrong. Probably he must have forgotten his notes. It's not easy. There are so many things you have to remember, and most importantly, it's not a memory contest. Of course, candidates tournament is a fight between the players. You have to be fresh. You have to be focused on the actual games, not just on the opening prep. And so, you can't just repeat everything. And sometimes you sort of neglect some of your prep. But this was an important one, and Alireza had to know what to do here. I suspect the variation he has, that his seconds have analyzed for him, starts with knight d6. That would allow bishop h6, and besides bishop takes f8 threat, there is a threat of checkmate. And here black just goes king h8, allows white to capture the exchange, but black has got a pawn and good knights, and it seems that, objectively speaking, black has enough counterplay here. But you certainly have to have your prep ready here, and Alireza didn't, and what he did is quite bad. He took and played a3, and after b3 he realized that there's not much to do. If he goes for knight d6, bishop h6 is very bad news. He probably missed something along these lines. And after king h8, ed knight d6, he simply allows white to capture the pawn. And this is what happened in the game. Jan, with a steady hand, took the pawn, looked at Alireza like, what the hell are you doing? You can find footage of that. I saw some nice video on Twitter where Jan did his usual facial expressions. But there is nothing to do here for black. There's no play. King is very safe. Nobody's coming to, the queen is not coming to b2. Eventually the knight got there, by the way, but this is not not dangerous. What is much more important is that black king is very weak. Black lacks that g pawn. Knight on f6 is unstable, and that would all be tolerable if he had some counterplay, but he doesn't have any. And after rook c8, Jan was very accurate. Bishop b6 and queen e1. Good move. Moving out of this x-ray here and hitting the e5 pawn. And the rest was a very smooth conversion. In fact, Jan opened up the position, brought all his pieces, traded some. As I mentioned, the knight on b2, that's not the piece that's going to checkmate the king. The king is, knight doesn't, the horse doesn't move like that, the horse moves like that. And it has nothing to do on b2 as the rook steps out. And it's Jan who sacrificed. I'm sure everything wins here, but this is the most confident and the most impressive way to finish the game. Just before checkmate in 3 moves here, Alireza resigned, and I have to say, a very impressive victory by Jan. It happens sometimes that you fall victim to your own preparation. If you imagine that Alireza just came to the game and didn't have anything prepared, he wouldn't have lost this badly. But as it happens, sometimes your prep works against you. Thanks to the prep, you create this chaos, you spur life into the game. You put the board, you set the board on fire, but then you are the one who gets burnt. You have to, of course, somehow find that very complicated balance between being in a good shape, being ready for a fight, but also having your prep in your head. And it gets harder and harder in modern chess because there is so much to remember, and also the opponents play so many different things. And this is something that all top players struggle with. Many top players, they spend way too much time memorizing their files. But then sometimes a game like that happens, and you see that doing it the other way is also not so simple. So painful game for Alireza. Very unfortunate for him. A pretty poor start with 1.5 out of 4, not something he was hoping for. It's going to be difficult to come back from that, but this is great news for Jan and his fans, because he wins his second game, looking really, really good. But we know the event is long, so anything can happen. Now let's jump into the next game. Next game, the one that I was very excited about, was a game between Ding and Fabiano. I was really eager to see whether Ding is going to finally break through and win this very important clash between two pre-tournament favorites. Let's see what happened. Ding played d4. Ding generally does not usually play 1e4. He plays the closed openings, all kinds of them. For this game, he played knight f3 and knight c3. Fabi pulled out a Ragozin defense, and now Ding played a very fashionable variation, queen a4 check. The idea is to lure the knight to c6 because it blocks the c-pawn from this important c5 break. And we'll see that is indeed an important motif, because after knight c6, e3 castle, queen steps back, it did its job. This is a better square. Now Fabi came up with a relatively fresh idea that just highlights what I just said. He went knight a5, opening that c-pawn, and finally trying to fight for the center. This is a rare move that hasn't been played a lot. It's only been played once, but Fabi seems to have done his homework and played it in this important game. Ding too seemed quite well prepared. He responded pretty well with c5, and after b6, trying to undermine the pawn. Sophisticated move, bishop d2. It seems as though black can win a pawn, but it's not so simple. After bc, we play a3, bishop c3, and bishop c3, and then the pawn finally is falling. So black has to do something else. And after knight c4, a3, knight d2, Ding simply recaptured the knight, bishop c3, and played queen c3. And what looked like an exciting position quickly turned into something very simple. White has a little bit of a better bishop, a little bit more space here for what it's worth, but there are not so many pieces left, and black has the idea of a5, bishop a6, trading the bishop, which is what Fabi did. a5, rook c1, and now bishop a6. Fabi got into quite some trouble after this, and I think here likely black will try to look for an improvement in the subsequent games. The thing about this position is that you do want to trade these bishops, so don't get me wrong, but you probably want to wait till white makes a move with the bishop and only then trade it. So here you might want to make useful moves, perhaps h6. Fabi thought white will also do h3. Maybe there is also some other useful moves, maybe queen e7. Also possible to go maybe c6. After cb, you can take with the queen, perhaps use pressure on the b2 pawn to compensate for the pressure on the c pawn in this position. In any case, an improvement could be considered, because after bishop a6, white took on b6, then took on a6, and simply castled. And this symmetrical position suddenly started looking a little bit worrying for black, because this pawn structure is slightly weakening that b6 pawn, the b5 square a little weak. White has very importantly control over the c file. And you could imagine slowly white penetrating along the c file, one day maybe activating the knight, and there could be some troubles. Fabi responded in a very, very, I would say desperate, a little bit even panicky way, but it worked out really well, so I'm not going to criticize that. He fought for the c file at all costs, even at the cost of a pawn. I thought that this was an overreaction to the potential problems he is facing. But actually, having looked at it a little bit more after the game, it seems to me that this was a legitimate way of playing. As Ding was unable to convert this pawn, black is going to activate his queen. Ding did something very sensible, tried trading away the annoying a pawn with b3. But after ab, knight b3, and knight to e4, knight is very active, and after a4, queen c4, the further trades happened, and we got a rook endgame that Fabi eventually held. So instead of b3, perhaps knight b1 was an option. Rerouting to c3, and if black goes knight e4, you can push the knight back with f3. This is not easy at all. Even after knight c3, knight a4, the knight will be a little bit misplaced. Meanwhile, black can activate the rook, perhaps push the pawn a little bit further, maybe then send the knight to the center. So the computer says that black has quite some compensation here. So perhaps the sacrifice of Fabi was not at all a bad idea. In the rook endgame that he got, Ding was able to maintain an advantage of one pawn, but that c pawn was pretty far advanced and actually became a target. Now after king comes here and the rook comes here to a5, pawn will likely fall, and the best Ding could do is to try and steal one of the black's kingside pawns. But now after the very accurate king e7, rook h7, g6, black first takes care of his kingside pawns. and only then collects that c-pawn. Yeah, then it was 4 pawns against 3, and that's a well-known theoretical draw according to the endgame theory. And the draw was very easy for Fabi. Somewhere around here, maybe possible to try and improve for white. I do think the endgame is probably still very much holdable for black, but maybe trying to get a different version of this endgame. There are some lines, for example, where you protect the a-pawn and then quickly bring the king in, allow black to capture the c-pawn, and then try to use the fact that our pawn is a bit further away from these pawns. Try to push in that kind of rook endgame. Perhaps it was possible, because yeah, what Ding did brought him nothing. And let's scroll through the moves that happened. Finally, Fabi had absolutely no problems here. For Fabi, it's a matter of fact draw. He just kept trading pawns, and until there was just one left. And then, as both the players know, it was a dead draw. To be honest, Fabi didn't even experience any problems at all, because Ding didn't even try, and there's nothing to try. These kind of positions, I'll show you even the worst that can happen to black. Let's say a position like that. This is a well-known theoretical position. White threatens to go king g6, where you can pose some problems, because if you give a check, king comes here. If you give a check from here, the pawn will cover it. But now black has a defense known as the Philidor defense, to go rook c6, and after f6, only then drop back, and now the pawn is too far advanced. The king cannot hide behind it. And this technique is, of course, well known for a player like Fabi and Ding, and they didn't even play it out. So, a disappointment for Ding, but I have to say Fabi looking firm, very good defense by him. And yeah, Ding will just have to be content with the fact that he pushed, but it seems that things are not going his way in this event so far. He's getting some kind of chances. He missed a big one against Rapport, but in this game, yeah, the chance was not big enough. Fabi just kept it within the range of a draw and defended very confidently. So, not a good news for fans of Dinglerian, but still on tournament ahead, and we'll see what happens. But as I already told earlier, after this game, for me, I will have to remove Ding from the tier of favorites in this tournament, because with a start like that, 3 white games and 1 loss and other games drawn, this is not a good start. And now he has a tough battle ahead of him to try and still make his mark in the tournament, but it's not going to be easy. Next game, that is between Richard Rapport and Hikaru Nakamura. I looked at the score of the players before the game, and Hikaru seemed to be having a very good score against Richard, and indeed in this game he was very confident. Richard also tried the anti-Berlin with bishop takes c6. That's what Fabi did against Hikaru. Now Richard tried to castle instead of knight d2. That's very sensible. But after bishop d6, Hikaru came up with a new idea. That is bishop to e6. A very odd looking move. You think the pawn is hanging, but it's not so simple. If you take with the bishop after captures, and hitting the knight and the queen, knight and the pawn, excuse me, black regains the pawn. And if white takes with the knight, then h5 is very annoying. And after knight f3 takes, if you go fg to try and stop black from opening the h file with h4, then black goes g4 and queen d4 check, and again wins back the pawn. So everything prepared by Hikaru, and Richard probably also was aware of this. He played queen d2, a good move. The queen is now ready to help out, defend both these important squares. But now black protects the pawn, goes knight d7, d4 f6, and after queen c3, white forces black to release the tension. But after ed knight d4, queen d7, black's fine. He's ready to castle long, and if you trade all the light pieces, queen b3, we get an endgame. And this is an instructive endgame. If you imagine that we trade the knights and the rooks, we get a pawn endgame that white is going to win, because he's going to create a passed pawn, slowly push it forward, and black cannot create a passed pawn with doubled pawns. You can just imagine white playing c3 and a3, or c4, b3, a4, any of these setups, especially c3, a3. I think it's a very efficient way of doing it. then yeah, it's just not possible to create the passed pawn, because after you push the pawns, I'm not going to react. So pawn endgame would be a win for white, but of course black is not going to go along. He will keep some pieces on the board, either the knights or the rooks or both. And Hikaru showed in this game how confident he is in holding these positions. He went for h5, g4, very active plan, going for knight g5, getting ready to hit the f pawn that can appear on f3. And then after he activated his knight, went for counterplay. Eventually Hikaru held very, very comfortably. He was not even worse. Activated the rook here, and lots of pawns got traded. And yeah, draw was attained so comfortably that black was not even really worse at all. So good game by Hikaru. Hikaru looking very good so far after the first round. Made a comeback, but he still needs to make that push to go for the lead. But I think he can. He's kind of ready for it. He's played some very good games in the past few rounds, and we'll see what happens. Hikaru fans, you can be ready for good things to come. I have a good feeling for Hikaru there. Duda Rajabov, another anti-Berlin. Duda, of course, also noticed that Temur Rajabov is struggling a little bit in this position. I beat him in Norway chess after c3. Hikaru beat him in the candidates after knight bd2, and now Duda tries one more sideline, bishop g5. Very annoying pin. And Raja started taking time. So at first things looked worrying once again for Temur, as he was caught off guard here. But in this game he played a lot more confidently. Later on, h6, bishop h4, now d6, very natural move. The most principal move here is a very surprising idea, knight e7, suggested by the computers. The idea is that if you take the pawn here, I have bishop d4, and if you defend the b2 pawn, I'll kick the bishop with a6 and b5 and win material. So here white has few different options, and the position is very complicated. I can imagine that Duda was enjoying himself here, trying to find some interesting ideas against Temur, but Temur just played the classical way with d6. Now Duda uses the fact that his knight is on b1 still and can be developed to a4, trying to get this bishop pair. And here Temur played an interesting move. He could have just stepped back with bishop b6, but he provoked white for this queenside expansion, which he thought could be a little weakening. I'm not sure about that at all, but interesting decision in any case. And now after castle, knight e7, this was a critical point. Duda doubled the pawns and traded everything, but the problem is that after he did so, Temur undoubled his pawns, and after Duda doubled, Temur undoubled, the game eventually became drawn as all the pieces traded and there was nothing doubled. Again, pawns were doubled, but then again they got undoubled. So captures, and everything was a draw. Very confident showing by Temur in this game. Perhaps this will give him some confidence to try and turn this tournament around. But for Duda, I believe this was a moment where he probably missed an opportunity to get the game going. He could have kept the bishops after takes with bishop c4, but what I also really like is to not double these pawns, since they anyway get undoubled later, but just take the knight, take the bishop here, and after knight takes, just go for d4. Push in the center, you have a bit more space. After g5, the pin is still annoying. The g5, bishop g3, the bishop is a little out of play, but these are chronic weaknesses, and there is this idea of removing the knight, then later going f3, bringing the bishop back into play. And the 5 square can be weak, maybe the knight can go there or something like that. Maybe this one can go here, or I believe an interesting position that would have offered Duda some chances, but instead, yes, he went for the other plan and didn't manage. A pity for Duda, because he started a very solid event with 3 draws, and if he had won today somehow, he would have been one of the contenders. But now with 4 draws, 1 point behind Jan, there is no reason for Duda fans to get all too excited just yet, but we'll see. Still, as I like to say, a long tournament ahead. And that concludes my roundup of the games. As Nepo is now in a good leading position with 2 wins, the tournament is finally opening up. Everybody needs to play catch up. Even Fabiano, who won a nice game at the start, also has to again deliver. And tomorrow he's got an opportunity. He's playing white against Richard Rapport. As I like to say always, with no disrespect to Richard, he is a very loose player, very creative player. That is a good thing, but also potentially a dangerous thing for him. He gives chances with the black pieces. He doesn't have a very solid repertoire, not a very defensive one. He plays different things. He doesn't control the position. He just creates chaos. And in that chaos, Fabi could thrive as he needs that win to catch up with Nepo. He also got Rajabov against Dingliren, both players somewhat out of shape. But Raja, if he wants to turn things around, maybe that will be a moment for him to try to do so, because a win against Dingliren would be a huge thing. However, if he does overpush, Ding could strike back, which would be a good thing for Ding. So we'll keep an eye on that one. Firouzja against Duda. I think it's crucial for Firouzja to try and win this game. He has had a shaky start, -1 score, one of the favorites, but already 1.5 point behind the leader. If he stays on -1 for just a little longer, I believe the confidence and his inner belief in the tournament's victory will slowly dissipate. While if he comes back right now, he will immediately brush away that loss against Nepo, get back to 50%, and still the future might still be bright for him. So the future in this tournament, future for him in general is bright, but the future for him in this tournament might be bright if he comes back tomorrow. So I think for Firouzja, tomorrow is very crucial. Must win against Duda in a sense. And of course, Nakamura against Nepo is a very big one as well, because Hikaru, I think, has played very good chess in the last 3 games after his first loss. And now is his moment to strike. He's white against Nepomniachtchi, 1 point behind. If he wins, they're even. He's got to bring something in the prep department. Jan is very well prepared, but if he does so, if he somehow manages to win, that will be huge. And I believe he will give it a shot. I believe he does feel very confident now. His last few games really have given him the confidence. But Jan is on a high as well. So very, very exciting game for me. Really looking forward to that one. Stay tuned. The games begin at 3 o'clock Dutch time, so whatever time that is for you. But my recaps come whenever I record them and whenever they get edited and uploaded. So I'll see you tomorrow in my next recap. For now, thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out my Chessable course, Go Pro on Chessable, and of course subscribe to my channel. Thank you and bye bye.